Hey everybody, it's Peter, and this is the 2023 Kawasaki ZX-10R. This is a bike I've been waiting for a long time because this is essentially racing royalty, and we're going to go through it in detail. My goal of this video is to give you a whole lot of detail that the other videos aren't showing you. So we're going to do a proper walk-around review of this. I'm also going to try to compare it to the ZX-6R tomorrow. Now I talk about that being possibly tomorrow because I only have one of these in stock right now. I only have one ZX-6R in stock, and if they sell, you could come buy this bike and it would be gone by tomorrow. You can take it the same day. So if they sell, I won't be around tomorrow. It just arrived, so we're gonna go in detail on this. Again, we're filming here at Jim Gilbert's Wheels and Deals, Jim Gilbert's Power Sports. They give me complete access to their entire Kawasaki lineup. This is the #1 volume Kawasaki dealer in the country. And my job is I get to make videos on this to make sure that you get the answers you want. So if you have questions about this bike that you're trying to get answers for, or just want to know more about it and kind of really go in depth with me, that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to do the same thing tomorrow, and I'm going to continue to come back to this bike again and again and again as long as I can, as long as it's still here in the showroom, to make sure I give you the answers you want. So make sure you subscribe, let me know in the comments, fill it up, and hopefully this video will have enough spread early on that we can continue to do that while it's still here. So let's get going with this review. So the Kawasaki ZX-10R is known as sort of that flagship superbike racing bike, but of course the Kawasaki lineup is kind of confusing. You've got those H2s that are above it, which actually make a little bit more power than this, but this is the race bike. This is that lightweight one, and when you think of the ZX-10R, think of it like a ZX-6 with more power. And I really do mean that, because when you think about this bike, it's only about 26 pounds heavier than the ZX-6R that's out there right now. And it's got a lot more, not just the engine, things like steering dampers, braking components, all kinds of things. There's a lot more things on this bike than on that bike, but it's only 26 pounds heavier. And just for reference, the Ninja 1000 SX, which is another leader bike, essentially, it technically has a slightly larger engine than this, but a 1000cc-ish bike, is about 60 pounds heavier than this according to Kawasaki's website. I think about 58 pounds heavier. So very lightweight, very maneuverable, but also all kinds of power. Kawasaki doesn't tell us weight, or doesn't tell us horsepower numbers, but just as a comparison, for instance, that Ninja 1000 SX makes around 140, 142 horsepower. This one makes over 200 horsepower, but it's not just about the horsepower, it's also about the way it's applied, how it's done, because like I said, the H2 makes a lot of horsepower as well, but this is a lightweight, fun bike with great technology. So that's one thing you have to keep in mind. Now, there are a lot of leader bikes out there and a lot of competitive ones. Of course, the race bike really isn't exactly the same as this, but you do start out with the basic components of this. One thing to keep in mind with those great leader bikes that are out there in this class is a lot of those are so race focused that they become less enjoyable for the street. And if you're like me, you want a leader bike that is a championship, world championship platform, world championship type bike, but if you're going to spend this kind of money, you probably want to be able to drive around the street, and that's where this one does well. It has things like cruise control, which is pretty rare on this kind of bike. We'll talk about that, but it also has an engine that is very easy to manage. It has electronics that keep things in check, and in a world where super bikes are becoming less and less, just like in the car market, two-door coupes are becoming less and less, and you're seeing more SUVs, super bikes are becoming less and less, and you see more adventure bikes and that kind of thing. There is something extremely special about driving something that was built from the ground up to perform, and that's what this is. It's not just about the power, but it's got all kinds of that. It's not just about the handling, but it's great with that. It's about all the little details. So this is going to be a little bit longer video as we dig into the details that make this bike special. So let's just start right out front. We'll work our way through. We'll come back to the dash. We'll talk about all kinds of things. Grab yourself a snack and a drink. We're going to spend some time on this one. All right, so like I said, we're going to go into a whole bunch of details here. So some of this stuff you may know, but again, bear with me because I want to cover as much as I can. First of all, let's start with the tires. Obviously, you need great tires. These are Bridgestone Battle Axe Racing Street. They are RS11 tires, Racing Street tires, front and rear. Typical size here, 190 width on the back. But of course, you can even feel the difference. Like I can just feel putting my fingers on these tires that they are a different rubber compound than the other bikes that we have here. And then of course, you've got a lot of obvious things down here. The largest brake discs out of any bike I've tested so far, so I think this is probably the largest ones they have. We should mention that the ZX-10, there is a ZX-14R, but that is a bit more of a dated bike. It's turned into more of a high-performance, long-distance kind of cruising racing bike, whereas this one is all about every type of performance, both power and handling, and that's really where we're at here. So power and handling includes amazing braking, and that's what we've got here. Brembo brakes here, radial mount, of course, dual calipers, of course, all the stuff you'd expect, lightweight wheels in behind there. And of course, you can see those upside down forks here, which again, less unsprung weight, but what's this? These are Showa forks, and you have the extra canister over here. Basically what this is going to do is the shock oil is going to go in there when you have a lot of suspension compression. These are called piggyback shocks on a lot of other type of vehicles. I don't know that they call that on a motorcycle, but what it does is it allows the heat to stay in here, which gives you very, very consistent performance here in the shock. So again, as you're flying over bumps and rebounds, of course, you got some heat in there. Heat can change the way these perform. It's now going to go in here, which means you have super consistent performance. You've also got adjustability everywhere in this, from electronic adjustments to manual adjustments for the suspension and everything else. That's kind of to be expected, but what's cool is, again, if you're riding this on the road, you can tinker with it, you can play with it, you can always try to make it better. If you're taking it to the track, you can do that as well to get that, you know, absolute best lap time. But really what you're doing here is you're getting it down to the ability to play with it on the street and on the track, which is super important. Let's look up a little bit before we move back and show you some things in the front that are worth pointing out. All right, so we've got a little bit of an awkward view here. Of course, dead center, sort of that ram air kind of thing, bringing air into the engine, comes through the frame and out through there. So that's kind of typical stuff on a lot of super bikes now. You put it at the highest concentration, the very front of the bike, which is going to give you the most pressure, which is what you need. Kawasaki also points out you've got lightweight LED lights in here. So it's not just that they have LED lights, they're lighter weight, which of course is contributing to that weight that I talked about earlier, but they also really focused on aerodynamics in here. This area right here is, they call winglets, and it actually feeds air through and comes out here. That contributes to downforce. Now, if you know anything about a good sport bike, you want to make sure that front wheel has good pressure on it heading into a corner. And extra downforce, of course, matters for racing cars, and it also matters for racing bikes. So you've got that in there. The other thing you're going to notice up here is the mirrors here. You can't see it from that angle. You have the signals up here in the mirror. That allows nice slim bodywork here, but still having your signals out here. These are kind of fixed. Now, it's possible that they are fixed because of the signal lights over here. The lens in here, we'll show you from another angle a little bit later, can be moved around. There's two benefits to this. One, obviously the signals stay in the same spot, they're out in a good visible area. But the second thing is you have some aerodynamic consistency here. So you've got equal pressure on both sides, even if your mirrors are aimed in different ways, which of course is, you know, just the little details that they focus on this bike that can make a difference. You've got a good different style windscreen here, which allows you to tuck in behind there as well. All about aerodynamics. All right, a little bit of a boring view here, but there are some things worth pointing out here. You've got that aluminum frame in here. It's even sort of contoured a little bit different to sort of fit into the bodywork. So it's not just like set up to kind of give you strength and that's it. It's contoured and shaped around the engine. It's kind of just hugging everything there. So it's kind of a cool way they do that there. Down to here, your engine. This is a 998cc inline 4, so it is a race legal size. Something like the Ninja 1000 SX is a 1043cc, even though they're both 1000cc bikes. That SX, which again, it makes 142 horsepower. About 203, 204, depends on who you ask, but either way, just above 200 horsepower at the crank here, so good power. Hopefully you can see the little header pipes in there, kind of already colored that purpley color, just looks really cool. It's the details of a bike like this that the longer you look at it, the more you see. And it's just kind of cool to see all those things there. It's also a very slim bodywork. So again, it does protect your knees here from some of the aerodynamics, but it's fairly slim. It's not something that's, you know, like something like the Ninja 1000, to me at least, feels like a wider bodywork type bike. This one is very slim, very lightweight. It feels very much like a 600 Super Sport. Taking a look at the back of the bike here, you see a few other things in here. Of course, we didn't really talk about the suspension at the back. Fully adjustable on the other side here. But of course, that horizontal backlink suspension carries all the weight forward and low, which is what you want. Nice big stylish swing arm here. The exhaust here, Kawasaki sound tunes some of their exhausts to sound really good. I have the Z900 RS SE, and that has a sound-tuned exhaust. This one does not have what Kawasaki calls a sound-tuned exhaust, but it sounds phenomenal, and that's just because of the type of bike it is. You don't have to tune perfection when it just sounds like that coming right out. Again, the big wider tire here, 190 millimeter tire here, same tire as the front, that racing street tire, so RS11 from Bridgestone Battle Axe there. Again, you can feel that difference in the rubber just even when you touch it there. And again, that frame here just kind of, it has some shape to it that you won't see on the video that just kind of curls around here, and you can really see that it is tucked in and narrow. The other thing you're going to see here is a relatively long seat, so that gives you a little bit of room to move around on the street, but also to get in that tuck position for aerodynamics. So a lot of little details that you may not notice, but they're all right there. So before we move to the dash and the electronics of this bike, let's just show you what it looks like with me on it. Now I'm about 6 feet tall. People always ask my inseam. I think it's around a 32 inch or so. I don't remember actually, I'll have to look that up. Getting on this bike, keep in mind, it is a race bike. It is a super sport bike. So you're gonna have that race position. That being said, it's not that uncomfortable. You're easily able to go into a tuck position. Some people will complain that the pegs are too high. They compare to other bikes and they say they're too high. I can tell you right now, you're getting a super sport bike. To move it an inch or here, there, here or there, it doesn't make any difference in comfort. What it does do is put you in a really good position for aerodynamics and tuck. And the thing I like about those higher pegs is they allow me to kind of put my feet in front of them. So as you start accelerating, you're not just hanging on with your arms, you're able to grip the tank and use your feet to hang on to keep that, as it's building with that 200 horsepower, you're really in a good position to use your feet to keep you in position in addition to just your hands. And of course you can sit back further, get in a really, really low tuck. For me, I don't have to go back that far. I got lots of room like that. So taller riders, perfectly fine. If you're a little bit shorter rider, it's probably fine as well because it's a tight leg tuck. But for someone my size, it works very well. Everything's easily reachable and you actually feel very much in control. But yeah, you're absolutely leaned over here. And this is where some of those street-oriented features come in, the things that, sort of are at play when you're riding on the street. If you're in a super sport position for a long time, your wrists can get a little tired. You have cruise control, so you're able to just relax for a second with both hands and then get back in. So if you're going on, a longer highway ride to get to that twisty road, you can take that little bit of a break for a second. You can take that hand off both sides and be really comfortable. And to me, that's Kawasaki realizing that, hey, we can build a world-class superbike, but we can also build a world-class superbike that allows you to take it on the street. So cruise control makes a difference in something like that. So before we dig into some of the electronics, let's just give you an overall view of what you're seeing here, roughly from the rider's perspective. Obviously, there's a lot of other videos out there which can show you this. You've got your adjustable suspension here, which is just typical par for the course. You've also got a steering damper here. Now, I'm gonna be really blunt. I haven't done my homework on the steering damper. I can tell you that moving it at low speeds, walking it around, it feels like it doesn't have a damper at all. And there are wires going in and out of here. So again, I'm just assuming that this is electronically controllable and probably speed compensating. So it is something that if you get into a high speed corner and you get a little bit of that wobble, it's gonna work to protect you against that. But I can tell you right now, it doesn't feel like it's there just moving it around. And like I said, I haven't looked into what those wires mean, but that does tell me that this is probably electrically adjustable, which would make sense for this bike. This is a very high-tech bike. You can see the mirrors out here a little bit. Like I said, I can move the mirror here with lots of adjustment here. I've totally messed it up for anybody who's riding, but the housing doesn't move. So again, very automotive style things right there. Those winglets that we talked about before, the air comes in here, comes out of there. So all that aerodynamics you can kind of see from behind, and you can also see the overall arching here of something like the ZX-10, which you don't get on the lower level bikes. Really about aerodynamics, getting you in that tuck position to keep things rolling, which again, over 200 horsepower, when you start moving at high speeds, especially on a track, you want to make sure that that wind's going over you correctly, both for speed and for comfort and safety of keeping this thing in line. You want to be tucked into an aerodynamic package, and that's what this does. So now let's zoom into the dash a little bit. We're going to talk about some of the things in there. We may have to do another video to talk about everything because there's a lot, but we're going to talk about some of the key pieces. So let's do that right now. So whenever I'm filming these TFT displays, there always appears to be some glare. Now, a couple things you have to remember. A camera looking at a screen is going to show more glare than your eyes. Your two eyes kind of dissipate that, glare and help you out. But you can see here when we turn the bike to the on position that it is actually very, very readable. Even though you see some reflections in there, like I said, it's much worse to view it on the camera than it is in person. You can really see what you've got going on here. So let's just talk about some of the basics. First of all, this is the full proper, race display. There are many options. And again, we'll have to do another video just to show a lot of the things. Your red line's about 14,000 RPM there. Right now you've got a throttle position sensor in a bar graph here. You can change that to a brake position sensor as well. It's currently set up to show lean angle at the top level there, battery voltage. We can cycle through all those things. Basically, you can show odometer, trip A, trip B. You can show fuel efficiency, that kind of thing. It doesn't give you a range estimate, but it does tell you how many liters are left in the tank. So let's just sort of show you that. So kilometers per liter is the instant, and their average fuel efficiency. And if you don't want kilometers per liter, you want liters per 100 kilometers, miles per gallon, that kind of thing. All of those are customizable, of course. There's the liters in the tank. So instead of giving you a range number of estimating the kilometers, it tells you how much you have left in the tank. Obviously, there's nothing in this, 0.2 liters in this, but I kind of like that. I wish my bike did that. My Z900 RS tells me a range estimate, but that can really vary on how much I drive. So knowing how much fuel is in the tank gives me a little bit of an idea of, am I out or am I, not out? You can see the lean angle on the top there. We'll cycle through that in a second there. Average speed is in there, total time, and the battery voltage, which is where we started. So let's go to the top display. So again, just above there on the very, very bottom. So we were looking, let me see if I can get my finger in the right spot. We were looking there. We're going to look just above that, which is lean angle. You can't see it too great from this angle, but you'll get the idea. Lean angle, and then, so lean angle was shown as a graph, and now it's shown in numbers. So left side 20 degrees, right side 18 degrees. That's how far this bike has gone while it's been riding. 2 kilometers, that's the test kilometers that we put on this thing, trip A, trip B, and back to lean angle. So you have that stuff. You also have a fuel light, that orange fuel area, which is right above there again, right up there, which is on. The quick shifter is turned off. Normally that display would be there as well. So there's lots of things we can show you here. If you want this display inverted, so the white to be black and the black to be white, you can do that as well. What I want to show you is the rider modes. Now, when the bike comes set up, you have the sport mode there. And then you have sport, road, and rain, which we'll cycle through right now. It takes a second to kind of hold down. You got to release the throttle to come back down. So sport, oh, maybe I'm not going to work. Oh, that's because I hit the cruise control. There we go. Sport, I hit the wrong switch because I'm not looking at the bike. Road, and then you come down to rain there. Those are your standard modes. Now what that does is it plays with a few things. You've got a few things at play. You've got full power, medium power, and low power. And then you've got 5 levels of traction control and off. So for instance, in the rain, it's low power and the maximum traction control. What's cool though is I turned on the rider modes. And what that does is you have 4 rider modes, rider 1, rider 2, rider 3, rider 4. So it says rider 1 up to the top right there. You can customize all those. So they're all set up from the factory to be power level full. So you can see power F, and over here traction control 2. But you can customize those, and that's really what makes a difference, because to me, the sport mode doesn't give me enough traction control for the first months of owning this bike. Sport mode is set up for, I think, traction control 1, but full power. The rider 1, 2, and 3, and 4, once you turn them on, you've got 7 rider modes to flip through there. But that then allows you to have, for instance, medium or full power, and varying levels of traction control that really allow you to, 1, get to know this bike, 2, set it up for different types of roads, different types of riding, but also customize it. And again, this is where this takes a superbike style bike and makes it really practical for the road. So there's a whole bunch of things in here. We can select over here just to show you some of this selection in here. Let's just do that right now. We'll hold the selection on the right-hand side of the handlebar, and you can go to vehicle settings, which we will select right there. And then again, shift lamp. So there is a shift lamp. I don't know, yeah, you can see it's in the shot there. Right up here is your bright shift lamp. That, on a regular Kawasaki display like this, what you can do is you can set up your tachometer to flash at you at a certain speed. This one has the shift lamp, so it really grabs your attention better. So again, you can pay attention to the road, and in your peripheral vision, you're gonna have that thing flashing at you at whatever you set it up to do. So it's currently set to 11,000 RPM. You can do that. You can turn your quick shifter on there. So we'll go down, quick shifter, other settings in here, and then there's the rider modes in there. So let's just select those rider modes for a second, and we'll show you it's turned to the on position. Oh, we didn't go to the actual settings of them, but that's where you can, in that system, you can set them up. And like I said, power levels is 3 power levels, low, medium, and high, or low, medium, and full, it says, L, M, and F. And then you have traction control 1 through 5. So all kinds of options in here, and that's just a piece of it. Like I said, turning that quick shifter on, turning on some of the other extra settings. Let's talk about this technology and how it works, the key pieces of it right now. So I've got my cheat sheet in front of you because there's all sorts of acronyms in here, and there's things like, let's just talk about it really quickly, Kawasaki Corner Management Function, KCMF, Kawasaki Sport Traction Control System, so SKTRC, Kawasaki Launch Control Mode, KLCM, Kawasaki Intelligent Anti-Lock Brakes, KIBS, KIBS, and the Kawasaki Quick Shifter, Integrated Riding Modes, Electronic Cruise Control, yada, 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 yada. Let's just talk really briefly as I set my computer away about simplifying all of those. Those are tied into what's called an IMU. What that does, and I've done a video on that separately, you can find that on my channel about Kawasaki's IMU. Basically it senses every position that the bike is in, and it can sense sort of up, down movement, side to side, forward and back, but it also senses the twisting on those functions. So think about, for instance, a wheelie control type system. On a traditional Kawasaki bike with just regular traction control, it senses that your rear wheel is moving at one speed. As your front wheel leaves the ground, it senses that's essentially slowing, and it says, hey, you're probably doing a wheelie. I'm going to help correct that. That's the traditional system. What the IMU does is it still uses that information. Hey, the front wheel is moving slower than the rear wheel, something's going on, but it also uses that inertial management unit, that thing that allows it to know that, for instance, in a wheelie type position. So what that does is it takes over 200 horsepower and allows it to have a really precise control over it through the electronics in addition to what you're doing. So it senses wheelies not just through traction control, but through that IMU. It senses cornering forces. So when you're in a corner, cornering ABS, cornering traction control, the sport traction control, it can sense the angle of the bike. It can sense if it's slipping out, if it's moving around, if it's doing certain things. It senses all of that and then is able to react in different ways. And that's why when you have 5 levels of traction control instead of 3 like some other bikes that are in this sort of engine size, you have a little bit more control. So whether it's traction control, whether it's launch control, whether it's ABS brakes, or all sorts of the other electronics, they're all using that IMU to allow it to understand the positioning of the bike, exactly what's going on with, you know, all kinds of checks every single split second to make sure it knows exactly what's going on. And that makes you a better road rider and a better track rider. So you can set the intervention to happen earlier. You can set the intervention to back off, and it has lots of steps in there. So in addition to being able to control power modes and everything else, the bike is going to allow you to get the most out of it, all because it's technology. And that's what's super cool about this bike. So let's talk a little bit about who this bike is for. When we talk about a true leader bike, obviously you kind of know what you're getting. You're getting that athletic seating position, so that's a piece that matters. It used to be that 600cc bikes were sort of the manageable ones and 1000cc's were only for the brave. But the reality is, with modern technology, this bike is very approachable, and that's a key difference between this leader bike and other leader bikes from other manufacturers. Because of the electronics on this and because of the engine character, this feels a lot more like a 600 bike with the way it delivers power. So you can drive around in that mid-range in a manageable way. If you give it that throttle in any gear though, you've got quite a bit of torque and immense horsepower, and you really get that full speed, that full power. So it's a really good leader bike, race bike that gives you everything. The reason you go with something like this over the other styles of powerful bikes out there is because you're dealing with something that starts out as the basic components to a world-class winning superbike. There's something different about driving a true performance bike as opposed to just a bike with a fast engine. The difference with this one though is in the way that it is drivable on the streets. It's still relatively comfortable for what it is. It's not going to be something like the Ninja 1000 SX, which is much more of a sport touring bike. But the ability to add cruise control on this means you can drive it longer distances, you can take it to the track, bone stock as it is, adjust it all up to make it get faster and faster and faster lap times. But the other key is, most of you who are buying this bike probably aren't going to have 5 or 6 bikes. Or maybe I'm wrong, maybe you will. But the point is, you can drive this on the road, you can tinker with it all the time, through the electronics, through the suspension, through other types of things, where you can make this exactly what you want and have an absolute blast on the road. And of course, that 1000cc over 200 horsepower is going to be something that really can dominate, really can take the power. But it handles like a lighter weight, simpler, you know, basic type, strip all the extra stuff away, and that's what it handles like. So that's what I'm saying. The difference is some of these bigger bikes that add everything in and you're fully electronically controlled, sometimes those electronic interventions step in because the bike is not designed to be a great handling bike without them. And that's what this is. Great handling, great fun, but also the electronics in there to help keep you safe. This is a bike that, for a leader bike, is somewhat approachable. It's not something for everyone, and we know that. Now, I just found out in filming this that the ZX-4R and maybe the ZX-4RR have both shown up as well. So this is going to be Super Sport Week. We can talk about this bike, we can talk about the ZX-6R, and we can talk about the ZX-4R. That's all coming this week. So there are still a lot of details we could go over on this bike, but I want to know from you, what do you want to know? What am I leaving out? What do you want to learn more about? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about this compared to the ZX-6R. Let's include the ZX-4R, talk about that. We'll do all kinds of super sport videos, and let's figure out what you guys want to know so we can build a video database here of things that you need to know about these bikes. Again, remember I'm filming here at Jim Gilbert's Wheels and Deals, Jim Gilbert's Power Sports, the #1 volume Kawasaki dealer in the country. I will film these as long as they're all in stock together. You know, this is probably the only ZX-10 we're going to see here unless something changes. So if it's available, I'll continue to film it. And if you have questions, I'll continue to make sure I get that for you. There is more information in the dash I want to talk about. We're going to try to do that as well. But again, let me know what you want to see, and we'll catch you in the next one.